Hello everyone and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sarah.
And we have got such a varied show for you guys today. We try and keep it interesting and not focus on too much of one thing each time. But this one we've really gone as varied as we possibly could. We are going to hit you with our game of the week, which was our preview last week. And it did not disappoint. Derbies derbied, ladies and gentlemen, and all of us in between. It was, what's the phrase I never get right? After darking? Or
the NWSL after dark.
Yeah, I always get it wrong and Sarah makes fun of me, so I'm like...
Was it dark out during the Manchester Derby?
It was, because it was it was the nighttime kickoff, so it was...
That's right.
WSL after darking.
It was a watchable time for me. It wasn't at 4 a.m. So what that means is that it probably was at nighttime for you.
Yes, it was. So we're going to talk about that and how it was Manchester United got their first Man City scalp ever. They have not beaten Man City before. And so this was a huge moment for...
Wait, I didn't look this up. Was it that they hadn't beaten City or they hadn't beaten City at City?
No, ever.
Period.
Yeah. Period.
See, it's when these stats pop up that I'm reminded just how new United really are to the WSL.
Yeah. So it was period, the end. This is their first City scalp. And of course it had to be ex-City player Ella Toone.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into that one.
We're then going to talk about the story that I feel covered a bigger story, so we're going to talk about two, which is the idea that Rangers and Celtic are going to come down from the Scottish League and join the WSL. So that is the big, flashy story. But then the one underneath is the WSL going to become a closed league like the NWSL, which is a more scarier prospect,
In other words, no promotion and no relegation.
Exactly. So we're going to discuss all of that. And then we're going to talk Canada. We're going to talk about their league with the Northern Super League because some big names are crossing that northern border.
Yeah, and we're gonna rewind all the way to base zero here. We're going to tell you what it is, when it was founded, when it starts, because this league has not gotten a lot of coverage. So we're going to give you all that info. And then we're going to talk about these very big names that have just announced that they're going to be joining the Canadian Professional Soccer League for 2025. I'm going to keep those in my pocket here. Keep listening for the names.
Yeah. You
don't go to Google. Don't Google it right now. Keep listening.
Yeah, but it's huge, these two names. Absolutely massive. So that's what we've got for you guys on this fine January day. I say that with a slight element of sarcasm.
How's everybody doing? The January blues are hitting. The winter depression is hitting. And we are here to take you through it. And if you need to get outside, but you hate getting outside, put us in your headphones, go on a walk until the episode's over, and you're going to feel much better. Or we're going to keep you company. So let's do it.
So let's begin with the game that everybody is still talking about. It was the Manchester Derby, and to be honest, Sunday was the day of derbies because we had two London derbies. We had the Old Firm derby between Rangers and Celtic, and then we had the Manchester Derby, which, as Izzy Christiansen said, she forgets about all other derbies because this is the one. This is the matchup. This is the one that everybody waits for when the fixtures come out. And it was at Manchester City's home stadium. That's the big Etihad, because they've got the mini Etihad that the women normally play in, or the Joey stadium as it is. So it was at the big Etihad. It had massive crowds. And spoiler alert, Sarah, is Manchester red or blue?
Manchester is red. I think it maybe has to be the title of this episode because I know a couple of these episodes have been titled Manchester is blue. So congratulations, United fans. Manchester is red and United took it, like Ali said, at the Etihad. But the score, 4-2. And it was quite a 4-2. Let me say that. We have to start with what you mentioned in the intro. Ella Toone with a hat trick in her first game back from injury and having never scored against City before. She had goals number 1, 3, and 4, I believe.
Correct, yeah.
The fourth one is the one that really put the dagger in the game, and we'll get into it at the very start of the second half. And I mean the very start. On the kickoff, she nicks the ball away from Kira Keating and tucks it home. And maybe that is where we start, Allie, because I haven't been online for obvious reasons.
For many reasons. For many reasons.
But I was watching this game and I feared that a lot of what happened in this game was going to fall on the shoulders of Kira Keating and that she would get all the blowback from this because she had a tough game. 4 goals is a tough game. And specifically that one that I mentioned, City passed it back to Keating and Elatoon nicked it off Kira Keating. And that's what led to the 4th goal when it was 3-2 to start the second half. Like, we could have had a completely different game. But I fear that so much of it fell on Kira Keating and people are upset with her. And my take, which is maybe a hot take and maybe not, is that I didn't actually think she played that bad.
You know what? When we previewed this game last week, I did say that it would be depending on what keeper they played, and I am a bigger fan of their second keeper. I am. I'm gonna say that right now. I feel like her shot distribution is better. She's a bit of a better shot stopper for me at the moment. I think Keating's head is still not there.
I was going to say, specifically to help you out, you mean like in this exact moment in time, Kira Keating it takes a long time to get back into form and she's not found her full form yet.
Yeah, not full form yet. However, I will say, and I'm going to quote the great football pundit that is my mother, Suzanne Coker, which is, your goalkeeper should be your last defence, not your only defence. And I feel that Keating's defenders were shocking. Man City's defenders had probably a worse game than she did. Whether that's a hot take or not, I don't know. But I feel like her her defensive line were terrible.
I completely agree.
And I don't know if it's because they're missing the leadership that is Greenwood, who is obviously out from doing her MCL. They also didn't have Alana Kennedy, who, again, is a great leader in that moment. But they looked like chickens with their heads cut off. They didn't know what they were doing. And you know what? Man United capitalised. And we can argue that Galton's, the second goal, was offside. It probably was, but there's no VAR. What are you going to do? But they didn't play to the whistle, which is what you're supposed to do for offside. And it didn't get called, and that's the breaks. So honestly, if I'm going to put the blame on this Man City side, it's in the defence. Yeah, Keating made a couple of stupid passes that did lead to the first goal and third goal, but out of all of the players, she's probably got like 20% to blame, whereas there is a higher thing on her defence because they just didn't do anything. It was shocking.
I couldn't agree more. They hung her out to dry. I would say 2 out of the 4 goals, they hung her out to dry completely. The second goal was off of a corner kick, and I do think she mishandled that. I think she was too timid. She should have come out of the box. Whatever. The 4th goal, the one that I've mentioned where Elatoon nicked it off of her, that was a hospital pass if I've ever seen one. And the last player who you want a hospital ball to is your goalkeeper. And I do not place blame at the feet of Kira Keating. I felt so bad for her in that game. It was completely, in my opinion, a full breakdown. When I look at this game, I said last week in our preview that I think it was going to be a sloppy game. I think it was a sloppy game in terms of football and play. The difference, and I mean on both sides, United and City, it was sloppy. The difference, United were sharp mentally, and City were sloppy mentally. And that is what decided this game here.
Yeah, as my coach always says, the biggest muscle that you have to exercise when you play football is your mental. You know, it's your brain. And it was flabby from Man City, let's be honest. Like, I get that it's not your best 11. I get you are missing injuries. But Gareth Taylor, how many times can you blame injuries and call yourself Injury FC? Because there are plenty other squads. Arsenal are currently suffering injuries and they managed a 5-0 win. You know, Chelsea are still missing 3 out of their 4 strikers. They managed to butter West Ham 5-0. Like, and are currently on like one of the most like unbeaten streaks at the moment. You have to work with what you've got, and you've still got some of the most world-class players. So I'm not buying it. I'm absolutely not buying it. And I think attacking-wise, they were sharper than defensively. I think we saw some great play from Fowler and we saw some from Firmino on the wings. I thought that was great play, but Park and Miedema could not make that work and could not work with that. And overall, just Man City were the worst team.
Big time. I mean, for those of you who didn't see, United went up 2-0. Elatoon scored in the 14th minute. Leah Galton in the 21st, and then Toon again in the 6th, and then City got 2 back before halftime. Went to halftime 3-2, and then that 4th goal from Elatoon at kickoff. It was utter chaos. Look, Manchester City, if you look at the statistics from this game, they had 74% of possession. They had more shots, and they had more shots on target. 22 shots to United's 12, 8 shots on target to United's 5. And yet, with all of that, they were definitely not the most dangerous team in the first half. And if I'm equating how dangerous both teams were, I would call it even in the second half. And that United, after Elatoon scored that goal in the first 10 seconds of the second half, United sat back. They really did pretty much nothing. They were pretty blah in the second half. And I still didn't find City to be more dangerous than United. They created some chances, but they were slow and they were predictable.
Yeah, I think that's what killed them, is their predictability, because you can tell that Man United watched their last few games and could see what they were going to do. And, we talk about defence. The Man United defence, was something else. When you're looking at it, it's Jade Rivet, it's Laetitia, it's Millie Turner, it's Gabby George, who have been on fire at the moment. Tallis Joyce has got, she didn't keep a clean sheet here, but has currently the best clean sheet record in the league at the moment. It's something ridiculous, like 98% of her games have been clean sheets.
Well, listen, though, I'm not saying United performed well defensively either, though. Like, I don't really believe that they did. Did they perform better than City? Yes. But do they still have some things to clean up? Absolutely. That's why I'm saying this was a sloppy game across the board. United looked more dangerous, more threatening, more unpredictable. They had a spark on offense. I want to spend a moment on Gareth Taylor that you mentioned, because we hit this point every year, Allie, where people kind of forget about him because City does so well. And they're like, oh, he can stay because look at how well they're doing. And they're picked to win the league this year, by the way. If you forgot, everybody, City were picked to win the WSL this year because everybody thought, how could they not without Emma Hayes? Well, here's why. Because if one little thing goes wrong for Gareth Taylor, he does not have the intellect, the tactical knowledge to make it work still with what he has. He just throws players out there and hopes for the best. And he's done that over the course of his entire career with City. And we know some in the history of women's soccer, at least in the past 2 years, there are teams who have won despite their coaches, despite them. Like the U.S. women's national team has said that they just went out in the round of 16 in the World Cup, the best game they had in the World Cup, and they ignored everything Vlad Kwandanovsky said and they just played. Where the Spanish national team has said they got no tactical knowledge, no breakdown, no preparation before games. They had to figure it out themselves. It is possible for teams to shine despite having a bad coach. And it is in these moments that I feel like his lacking of knowledge and tactical knowledge as a coach shines through. And you're right. They have all of the players to do better than this. And he doesn't know how to make it work.
No, and the thing is, there is a lot of focus on the other Manchester coach, which is Mark Skinner, and there is a lot of calls for Mark Skinner to go out, and that's a whole other topic which we could probably cover in another episode. But the difference between the two is Skinner, right or wrongly, has experience in the women's game. He coached at Birmingham, he coached at Orlando Pride with varying degrees of success, and he's now at Manchester United.
At the professional level, I'll even add. Just even at the professional level, Gareth Taylor didn't have.
No, Gareth Taylor's biggest team that he had before taking over the women's team was Manchester City's under-10s. So let's get that out the way. So it very much feels like he's run out of ideas now. He doesn't know what to do. He's got no tactical nous about him whatsoever. And I'm like, when you've got some of the greatest players at the moment that you could do magic with. And yes, you've got injuries. Like, I'm so sick of it. He goes, yeah, well, Greenwood's out and Kennedy's out and Chloe Kelly, which we will come on to.
Yeah. I do think to give them a little grace and to give the players a little grace, they were massively missing Greenwood. And Kennedy is, I don't think, as positionally and tactically strong as Greenwood, but she's certainly a leader.
And also she's got the height. So like when they've got those pinging those corner balls in, then you can aim for Kennedy's head, if nothing else.
So very much missed. But if you look at the game and you look at how they were broken down, It's positioning. It's how tight are you to the other center back? How tight are you to your outside back? How tight are you across the line? How high of a line are you playing? It's these small things.
It's football 101. Let's be honest, it's the basics.
Yeah. But so like while I give them grace for that, it's not you can't hang your hat on it, which I think is what you're saying you're annoyed with Gareth Taylor about doing.
I give no grace.
Yeah.
I give no grace. And the reason I give no grace is because they had this a couple of seasons ago and he couldn't deal with it. They had it last season and he couldn't deal with it, and he's got it again this season. Like, you have gone through these injury wars before, and how have you not learnt from this? How have you not learnt from this? That it's like, it doesn't even sound like he's even got a plan A, never mind a plan B, C or D, if his best 11 isn't available. And if I was a Man City fan, I would be fuming, because you're right, this should have been your season. This should have been your season to be, you took Chelsea to the last game of the season. You're now fourth. You are now fourth, and you are 8 points behind the leaders, which is Chelsea, 31. You've got 22. They've got 31. Your season's done. Like, you might get Champions League, and you've got to hope that Arsenal and Man United falter, but you might not get Champions League again after so many years of not having it. Unless you win it, which, let's be honest, if after that performance you've got no hope, you're not going to get it. And what is it going to take for the club as a whole to wake up and get in a proper manager?
Well, a huge game coming up, not this coming weekend, but the following. City against Arsenal.
Woohoo!
That's a big one. These two teams, as you said, they sit just 2 points difference in the table. Arsenal and United have 24 and City has 22. Despite, I feel like we've come off as being very angry at City, which I felt very neutral in this game. They just really listen, if you're listening to this episode and you didn't watch that game, trust us when we say they deserved this little lashing that they just got from us.
Yes, they did.
They really did. But despite all of that, this was a blast of a game. I had thoroughly enjoyed watching this.
I was going to say, as a neutral, it was probably one of the greatest games I've ever seen, because Man United were 3-0, for people who don't know how the scoreline went, Man United were 3-0 up, and then City got 2 back just before half-time, and you think that's the bounce. That's it. Because you think that Man United are going to go in a bit deflated because they've thrown away a 3-0 lead to have it.
I thought it was going to go 3-3 before halftime. Yeah. I was like, all bets are off. Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. And only having it down to 1 goal. And then as soon as Tooney scored that beauty of a 4th goal, you just knew. And that's the thing. But we mentioned a key player that was not on the squad. Now, Gareth Taylor said this because she picked up an ankle injury in training. However, that does feel a bit of an excuse, because the stories are coming out. We are in the midst of the January transfer window. We're in the final stages. It ends next week. And usually all chaos comes in the final stage.
Oh, yes, and we will be covering that next week. Do not worry, folks. But Chloe Kelly is looking like she wants out of Man City. And we said that. We said that, we thought that was likely. Euros are coming up. She's going to want game time to keep her England place. There's only so much grace Serena can give her before game time becomes a problem.
It's the same reason that we saw Hayley Ladd leave United.
It's the same reason we saw Hayley Ladd leave United. And I turned around and foolishly said, well, she's not going to go to Man United because she wouldn't cross that City divide. And now it's looking like that might be possible, that Manchester United might be signing Chloe Kelly on loan for the rest of this season.
It's looking like more than likely. I think most major sources consider this to be happening. Perhaps even when this episode comes out, Allie, in between us recording and when we drop it, it'll have happened. Or I don't know. I thought Jen Beattie spoke really wonderfully about this, where she was like, I wish I had the direct quote, but she basically was saying, initially, I would have been shocked because, like you said, you don't cross that divide. But then you think about it in terms of personally, she wants to stay in Manchester. You think about it in terms of the England team, that she wants to get a look. And can you blame her?
No, I 100% don't. But I'm going to say this now. I hope she's got a thick skin, because you only have to look at the fact that Greenwood still gets the snake emoji on everything that she posts, and she didn't play for Man United for years now. She's been at City for 4 years now. It's hard to cross that divide. It's a bit different if you've got a club in between. I feel like Nikita Paris managed it and things like that. But if you're going straight from one club to another.
I wish that wasn't the case for players like this, though. Like, I get if you're, I don't know, like the star forward or the captain, and then you cross that line because you want to, or because they offered more money. But if you're a player who's not getting playing time, and we're starting to talk about people's livelihood crossed over with their personal life. Like, this is a player who is not getting playing time, who wants to stay on the England national team, who probably wants to stay at City, but isn't getting playing time. And this club is effectively handcuffing her and forcing her to make this decision. So I implore City fans to go easy on her, because I feel like she is kind of given no choice right now, unless you think that she should just up and move her whole life, which I think is easier said than done.
It is 100% easier said than done. I am excited if this move does take place, because I'm excited to see how her, Clinton and Toon play together. I feel like that is going to be a gorgeous combination. It's going to make Manchester United even harder to play than they are at the moment, because on paper, I talk about this with my fan friends all the time. On paper, Manchester United has one of the most gorgeous squads in terms of talent and players that they've brought in, and
I mean, probably underrated squad.
100%.
Like, names that people only know if they're really deep in the league, but if you know that player, you're like, oh, that's a great lineup.
Exactly. You look at that lineup. I'm looking at that lineup from the Derby now, and it's insane. So I hope it works out for her. I think it will, and just to see those three play together gives me goosebumps, because that's what we want in England. So if we can get them playing together more frequently in club, it gives me bigger hope for the Euros, which is at 0 at the moment.
I will say, on a final note, you mentioned Grace Clinton. I've spoken very highly of her on this podcast. I love watching Grace Clinton play. You know who was an absolute revelation for me in this game? Elizabeth Turland.
She's finally found her feet at Man United.
I think this was her big game. I think it's all kind of come together, and it felt like watching her in her form from last season.
Speaking of derbies,
nice.
See, I am nobility of the segue. But speaking of derbies, the big story that came out last week, and it's one of those things that sometimes, I feel like the FA throws out random things just to get people talking, but
probably.
But the big story, and then, like I said, I feel like covered a second more likely story, is that Rangers and Celtic are in talks to join the WSL. So move from the Scottish League down to the WSL. Now this is in like far off talks. Like the earliest season that they would join would be the 2027 season.
That's not that far off.
It is. Anything can happen in football.
It is kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
It's like when Boz Nation joins the NWSL. So,
because it wouldn't be next season, it would be the following season, is what you're saying.
And that would be the earliest that this could happen. Yeah. Thoughts, feelings, and opinions on whether this is a good idea or not. I'm going to give you a hint. I think this is a terrible idea.
Let's start with you. And let's start with like the impetus for this. Because I think people hear this. Well, when I first heard this, I was like, that feels random. Why are we even considering that right now? Is it because the WSL wants to expand, but they don't want to promote teams from the championship? Why is it?
I think the biggest factor, as with all things including sport, is money. Now, Rangers and Celtic are the two big teams in the men's, and I'm going to emphasize that because one of my points comes up with why that's stupid. In the men's side, they are the most recognizable sides in the Scottish League in the men's side. You watch the Scottish League, it used to be a running joke that they're going to toss for who's going to get the league this year, Rangers or Celtic. Like, they were the two big teams, and they have got the name recognition and they have got the funding, which is why I think it's these two. Whereas if you're looking at a championship team, at the moment, the way it's going out, it's probably going to be either Birmingham or Bristol. They don't have that name recognition that Rangers and Celtic do. I think this is a terrible idea because it's going to be a detriment to both the Scottish League and the WSL. They're run by completely different FAs for a start. So are you saying that because Are you splitting Rangers and Celtic from their men's team and making them their own entity? And are they going to come under the English FA if they join the league?
Is there going to be now a UK FA created, and the WSL might span the entirety of the UK? Because if that's what we're talking about, I might be up for that, to be totally honest.
Well, that's the thing. Because it's the thing, like, we've got some Welsh teams in the men's side, but they come under even though they're in Wales, they come under the English FA. It's confusing. But I'm like, are you splitting them away from their men's team? Because I don't think their men's team are going to join the Premier League, so therefore they're going to still be run by the Scottish FA. Are you bringing them down to the thing, or are they going to stay, but it's going to be sort of a joint agreement? But then we can't guarantee levels of funding because the Scottish FA has less money to fund than the English FA. So are we just going to end up with, another team that's just going to get battered week in, week out? Are they going to have the nous to do that? Travel time is stupid because Glasgow isn't the highest point of Scotland. There are teams that play higher, but can you imagine on a scheduling day Celtic versus Brighton on a Friday night at 6:45?
You know what? I can, because I live in a country that's very big and travel is a big consideration, and trying to limit travel as much as possible for these athletes is also a big consideration. So it's worth mentioning.
I think it's, when I wrote this point, I did laugh because I'm like, I'm going to be talking to Sarah, whose country, you can fit our country in Texas 13 times. Like, I'm aware. But the fact of the matter is like, take, for example, the arguments we've had about overloading players. I'm going to use my club for the moment, but there are other clubs we've talked about with Chelsea and Ding. West Ham in the next 2 weeks have 6 games. They've got 3 games each week, and most of them are local. They're either home games or they've got an away game at Tottenham, which is down the road. The furthest one is they're playing Liverpool at the end of it all. Now, can you imagine, say for example, Celtic versus Brighton on a Friday night, and then they've got a midweek game, which was probably Manchester, which is not as far, but it's still, a decent amount of travel. They've then got, a home game and stuff like that. Like, the travel implications, plus these teams also do compete in the Champions League, whether they still will, whether it will be a case of they have to go by the UK joining, which means they may not get the chance to play in the Champions League again. But again, you've got to have all of these considerations.
Well, we should talk about the implications for if these two teams were to leave the Scottish League as well. Where does that leave the Scottish League?
Well, exactly that. It's going to screw the Scottish League over because I was talking to Rhiannon, shout out to Rhiannon, who is our Scottish expert. We are starting to see some more investment in, like, for example, the Edinburgh teams. Hibs and Hearts are starting to fight their way up in the table. But if, again, the named teams, which are Rangers and Celtic, go, will we still see that level of investment? And also, why Rangers and Celtic? When you look at the stats, Glasgow City have won the league more times than both of them combined.
Well, it's what you said, though. It's money.
It's money.
It's money. But
if I'm going,
and I will say, though, from a high level, when you just pitch it at a high level without thinking about how would it work, what about logistics, when you just pitch it at a high level, I'm like, that sounds like fun. That sounds like a blast. I am against it, having now gotten into the weeds, but like upon first seeing it, I was like, oh.
I wouldn't be against if we did we pitched for the NWSL Canada and Mexico to have like an interleague tournament.
Right.
I'm not against that if we wanted to do, a Welsh, Scottish, English league tournament. I'm not against that. Like, something as a fun thing to do. We saw it with great effect with the La Liga, MX and the NWSL.
With great effect is maybe an overstatement, but it happened.
I enjoyed it. But I'm not against it. But I just think, as a rule, it's stupid.
I mean, yeah, when you think about, when you just start to talk about like how it would work, it does make me think that it's just an idea and not really like something that could potentially happen. But if, all of those logistics and barriers weren't there, it would be a blast. I think the part we haven't touched on here is something that's been a topic for the past 2 years, but it's kind of floated in and out of conversation, which is WSL expansion. And Emma Hayes used to talk about this during her time at Chelsea. Like, why is this league stuck at 12 teams? Why are we not expanding it? Because expanding it would lead to more competition. And having more teams than just one. Just one team is promoted every year. Having more teams promoted and more teams relegated, it makes it more interesting. It makes it for better competition. It makes it for a better race at the bottom, at the top, in the middle, everything. They need to expand the WSL. This probably isn't the way to do it, but they need to expand the WSL. And I don't think they should be a closed league, because what is really fun about English soccer is the promotion and the relegation of it.
Well, this is my next point. I feel like that the Celtic and Rangers being parachuted in was to cover the other thing that's being talked about, which is making the WSL a closed league like the NWSL, which is there's no promotion, there is no relegation. The problem with that we have is that we have a very different system and a very different setup to the NWSL. In fact, that we have, and I've talked about it often, and the thing is, we have what we call the football pyramid, which is we have, a top league, and then it filters down to different levels, and different leagues fill the different thing. And that would be so detrimental to our football league as a whole. We have to think about more than just the WSL here, because what do teams have to fight for if there's no promotion for them? What is the incentive to invest? Is it going to encourage investment? Daniel Levy of Tottenham has turned around and said he's reluctant to invest in Tottenham women if relegation is a possibility, which I'm like, it doesn't stop you investing in your men's team with the way they're playing, but that's probably
well, if you don't want to get relegated, invest now. It's pretty easy.
But it's like, will it mean that clubs will be willing to put more money in? I don't think so. I think it's going to lead to such a stagnate complacency. It's not going to be good for the growth of English football. And, as somebody who wants, we talk about, we want our women's national team to grow, and we want to be competing for the Euros again and retain our title. We want to compete in World Cups and be up there and get to finals and stuff like that. It's just going to stagnate because it's not going to encourage talent in the growth. You look at Chloe Kelly and Lauren Hemp played for Bristol when they were in the Championship and went up. You look at Fran Kirby, who was with Reading from when they were in what was WSL2 that became the Championship and got her start in Chelsea and stuff like that. Like, we've seen some English talent grow through the league, and if we make it a closed league, it's just not going to happen.
I agree. I think saying that you won't invest in a team if it's not in the top league is a very thinly veiled way of trying to get out of investing in the team if they do get relegated. We've seen what Michelle Kang is doing with the London City Lionesses, and they're not in the top league. They're not in the WSL yet, and she is investing in them, and she is seeing returns, and she will see a return as well on the pitch when they get promoted to the WSL, and that's a when they get promoted, because they will, because of the investment that she's making. So it's just a thinly veiled excuse for him to not invest in the team, which is absolutely absurd. And I agree with you in terms of the pyramid. The pyramid is one of the best things English soccer has going. It is a developmental system. It's a wonderful one. It's something that the United States has been trying to build for a very long time. It's hard to do here because of the collegiate system that already exists. But if you're talking about English soccer as a whole, the pyramid and the promotion, the relegation, all of these other teams, it is developmental and helps grow the game on the men's side, on the women's side as a whole, and it helps raise the bar across the board. So I completely agree with you that keeping it as an open league is the best thing for the WSL. And I think that anybody who's saying that there would be more money in it if it was not is either not in touch or just lying for their own benefit. Look at how much money's in the English Premier League. That's not a closed league. It's pretty simple. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To Scotland, and it was the semi-final of the SWPL Cup this weekend, which saw the Old Firm derby in full effect. Rangers beat Celtic 2-1 in a game which saw Rangers coach Joe Potter sent off for holding up play. In the second semi-final, a slightly tamer affair, Hibs won 3-0, which means they will face each other in the final on the 21st of March.
Into France, it was a top 2 battle this week as PSG took on Lyon. It was Lyon who took the 2-0 win. This has left Lyon with a 7-point lead, and PSG fall to 3rd place. Paris FC rise to 2nd with their 6-0 win.
To Spain, and Barcelona are on another winning streak with their 2-0 win this weekend. They are 12 points ahead of their closest rivals. However, Real Madrid's shock loss this weekend has furthered that gap.
And finally, to Italy. Speaking of shock losses, league leaders Juventus lost to current champions Roma. The 3-1 win pushes Roma up to 3rd and closes the gap on 2nd to 3 points.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides research analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
And finally, we are going north of the border and we are going to Canada. And the Northern Super League starts this year. We're super excited that Canada has finally got its first top division professional league. So let's talk about it. Let's take it back to the bare bones about what it is, how it started, how it's all going to work, and if we can watch it and who's playing in it. So let's start with the basics. Sarah, take us through it. How did this all come about?
All right, so like you said, the Northern Super League is a top division professional women's soccer league starting in Canada. They are kicking off this year, 2025, in April 2025. It's a long story for how it was founded, and it's really interesting. So I'm going to dig into a little bit of it right now. The league right now is owned and operated by Project 8 Sports, which was founded by former Canadian international Diana Matheson back in June 2022. Now, her story is really interesting because when she retired from professional soccer in July of 2021, she started advocating for a professional women's soccer league in Canada. And in December of 2021, she presented a plan for that to the Canadian Soccer Association, but discussions just kind of didn't progress further from there. And then she was concurrently at Queen's University at Kingston to get a Master of Business Administration. And she co-founded Project 8 Sports, which is the institution that now owns and operates this Northern Super League. She founded it with her business partner, who was also at school there, and just kind of took it from there. Basically, they founded it in June 2022 and then announced the league, which was initially known as Project 8, December of 2022. So that's just a year after she pitched it to the Canadian Soccer Association. They said, no, thanks. And then a year later, she had already formed Project 8 and she had already created this league and announced it as well. She did this, we might remember, all of you listening might remember, because she did this with none other than Christine Sinclair sitting right next to her, who served as an advisor to the group. So that in and of itself is just, it's really beautiful. It's a former national team player who thought, this is what Canada needs. This is what they deserve. I can't believe that this country with a gold medal in women's soccer doesn't have its own soccer league. Let's come together. Let's get sync in here and let's create it.
So that's all, it feels very like pipe dreamy and like they're aiming for it, but they don't quite know where they're going. So how have we got from that, company and the backing of Christine Sinclair to a fully fledged league with teams and competition and all of that good fun stuff?
They're doing it the right way. They're bringing money in. They're bringing investments in. They're paying players a good salary. If you look at their base salary right now, it's at $50,000 is the minimum. And obviously that's low, but you look at what the NWSL started out with. people were making like under $30,000 to play in the NWSL when it first started. Like $50,000 minimum to start out as your first year as an independent league is fantastic.
I was going to say in the WSL there were some teams that were paying their players $12,000, so 50,000 is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're doing it the right way. She's had she's noted actually that she's had talks that included independent and foreign ownership groups. She announced franchise fees of $1 million with an expectation of owners investing $10 million total over the first 5 seasons. So that's where a lot of the money is really starting to come in. They also have entry in including equity in the league itself. I think it's wonderful. And then you look at the soccer of it all. And obviously the goal of this is to continue to grow women's soccer in Canada. So they've placed the ever controversial foreign players limit. Each team is going to be limited to 7 international players, 7 international spots per team here. And also most interesting, she has said that the league will not deal with Canada Soccer Business, which is the entity that owns the broadcast rights to the Canadian Premier League, which is the men's soccer league. So she's outright said, I'm not going to broadcast with the same people who broadcast the men's league because I know they're going to get priority. So they went elsewhere and they got a partnership with TSN and CBC, who will be broadcasting their games in Canada. She's going about it all the right way.
So how many teams will be playing in this league? This is what people want to know, because they need to pick the team they're going to support.
Okay, so far for the inaugural season, there will be 6 teams: Halifax Tides FC, Montreal Roses FC, AFC Toronto, Calgary Wild FC, Ottawa Rapid FC, and Vancouver Rise FC. So
our regular listeners will know that we had a wonderful interview with Corey Soto, who is joining Toronto. So that is a name that we all know. But 2 huge Canadian legends, and I don't use that word lightly because they are Canadian legends, have announced this week, including one coming out for retirement to do it, they are joining the NSL. So go on, Sarah, I'll let you do it. Who are these 2 amazing Canadian
I get the honors.
legends? Yes.
Quinn and Desiree Scott have both announced that they will be joining. Quinn moving from Seattle Reign in the NWSL up to Vancouver. They will be playing with Vancouver Rise FC, which makes a lot of sense. It's about a 3-hour drive from Seattle to Vancouver. So they're going to stay close to home, close to family, friends, etc. And Desiree Scott, oh my goodness. This was the one we were both like, are we for real? She came out of retirement for this. Desiree Scott has had such a long, storied career. She started her career in Canada with the USL W League, which is a 2nd division league in the US and Canada. Played her way into Division 1 soccer. We all know her from her time in the NWSL. Most recently, she was with Kansas City Current. And then in October of 2024, just this past year, she announced that 2024 season would be her final year of professional soccer. And now she's come out and said, just kidding, I'm coming out of retirement. I'm going to finish my career where I started it, in Canada, in my home nation. And she will be joining Ottawa Rapid FC.
This is huge. This is absolutely massive. And I feel it's such a great, because let's be honest, it is probably bookending her career.
Absolutely.
You know, she's 37, which is why she was going to hang up the cleats, the boots.
What a wonderful way to do it, though. Like, can you imagine how good that's going to feel for her to step out with a jersey for Division 1 Canadian women's soccer team on her field in Canada right as she started it, and also to be able to play with a lot of the young talent that's coming up in Canada and kind of show them the way and show them how it's done and tell them how terrible it was when she was first starting in 2006.
I mean, they do that. Like, the legends, I've always remembered, like, Jill Scott being talking about, like, to Alessia Russo being like, you don't know you're born. Like, yeah. Compared to what we went through.
Yeah.
But I think it's fantastic. You know, it's so great for the league to have these legends come and give it their stamp of approval. We will mention, just to darken it a little bit, is that Quinn was interviewed asking why they're moving from Seattle to Vancouver, because like you said, it's not that far particularly, and they were asked, is it due to the political climate? Because as many will know, Quinn is non-binary. They are the only out non-binary player in football.
I don't know that they're are they the only non-binary player. I think that they're the only out transgender player in women's football.
It's one of those ones where it's semantics, because some non-binary consider themselves trans, which Quinn does. Some non-binary people, such as myself, do not.
Right.
So,
but that's what I'm saying. I'm wondering if there are people that don't consider themselves trans but do consider themselves to be non-binary, as in professional women's soccer. I don't know.
I was going to say, I don't know of any.
Know. Oh, okay. Well, then there you go.
I was going to say, I don't know of any. I could be wrong, but I don't know of anybody.
None publicly. That's what we'll say.
Yeah, I was going to say, none publicly. Quinn is Quinn. But they were asked, are you moving back to Canada because of what's going to happen in the next 4 years? And their response was, it's not because of that. You know, the big move is, they want to go back to Canada. It's, their home. It's, they play on the national team. They want to stay there. But as a openly trans player, and the only openly trans player in women's football, it makes sense for them to go back to somewhere that's a bit safer.
I said this to you before we hit record, and it's a sad statement, but I'll say it. The political climate in the United States could end up doing wonders for this new Canadian league and the types of players that they're about to start to get coming from the United States. I don't know. Might not happen, but very well could. Wow, I always hate ending on a note like that. Let's not. How do you watch this league, Allie? Well, if you're in Canada, you can watch it on TSN or CBC. I believe, in anybody Canadian, let me know, because it's hard to keep it straight for like all of the countries. I feel like I've got it down for the UK and like what most people have access to and what most people don't. I know it for the US. I don't fully know it for Canada, but I believe that most people do have access to at least TSN. I believe that to be true. Tell me if I'm wrong, though. I did some research to see if anybody outside of Canada could watch it, and as of now, it seems like the answer is unfortunately no, that the league has not secured any rights for streaming outside of Canada. Perhaps they'll stream it for free on YouTube. Haven't seen anything of that regard, but perhaps they will. However, if you do own a VPN, now's a great time to use it. If you don't have one, now's a great time to buy it for all reasons, soccer and other. I use mine constantly. Sometimes I'm in the UK, sometimes I'm in Spain, sometimes I'm in Canada. I'm always traveling the world and watching football.
For some reason, I'm always in Argentina. Whenever I use mine, they put me in Buenos Aires. I'm like, okay.
Oh, sometimes I go to Manchester just to wave to you, Allie.
Oh.
And that is it for this week of the Women's Soccer Show. As always, check out our Patreon for a ton of extra bonus content. Patreon.com/TheWoso Show. And tune back in next Wednesday. We'll be back for our regular episodes. As always, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.